Hi, it's Jonathan Doolin here. I'm continuing my wild speculations about history. It is Christmas 2020, and I recently realized that Jupiter and Saturn crossed, got well less than a degree apart. So, like, uh, maybe this, like the head of a pin could have fit between them or something like that. They were very, very close, and I heard on the news that astronomers were saying this could not possibly be the Christmas star. So I began. So when astronomers say something cannot possibly be, that usually gets me to start thinking, let's look into that. So now I've done a little bit of research and I've found that Johann Kepler actually did believe that the crossing, not, or the triple crossing, the triple conjunction of 7 BC was indeed the Christmas star. In particular, you can find this paper, Astrophysics Data System, uh, by Burke Gaffney W., Journal of the Royal Astronomy Society of Canada, Volume 31, page 417. And it says there's an article here entitled Kepler and the Star of Bethlehem. In this article, it points out that the astrologers of old observed that Jupiter was in conjunction with Saturn about every 20 years. However, a conjunction that takes place in the same part of the sky takes place every 800 years. For instance, the conjunction of 7 BC happened here directly in front of Pisces, and that would happen again in 800, will happen again in 1600, and it will happen again in 2400, I guess. But the next thing in the article says that the conjunction that Kepler observed in 1603 was over here in Sagittarius, so it wasn't the one in front of Pisces. No, in December 1603 there was to be a conjunction of Jupiter with Saturn in Sagittarius, which to the astrologers was one of the points of the fiery trigon. So you can see 20 years before this, it would have been in 1643, would have been in front of Pisces. So that would have been the 800-year separation, maybe. Um, Here's a better representation. The trigon diagram of Jupiter-Saturn great conjunctions. You can see that this point is kind of progressing or precessing along the path, so that at a certain point it will reach uh, the exact spot in Pisces where it had been. Like this point will progress to this point, and then this point will progress to this point, and this point will progress to this point. So the triangle takes the triangle would take 2,400 years to to go around one complete time. So in the autumn of 1604, when Jupiter and Saturn were still in the fiery trigon and not far apart, Mars was to come and be in conjunction with Saturn on September 26th. With Jupiter on, Mars was going to be hit Saturn on September 26th. Mars was going to hit Jupiter on October 9th. Thus, in October 1604, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn would be at the vertices of a triangle. That doesn't give a very good description of this diagram anyway, since these are at three corners of the sky, three opposing corners of the sky. Okay, I'm finding different definitions for fiery trigons. Girolamo Cardano defined the fiery trigon as the first of the trigons formed by Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius, the three masculine signs that are also the houses of this. So really, the statement here, in the autumn of 1604, when Jupiter and Saturn were still it should say in Sagittarius, because that's where they were, in Sagittarius. In Sagittarius and not far apart, Mars was to come and to be in conjunction with Saturn on September 26th and Jupiter on October 9th. So this is a significant event because Mars crosses them while they are very close together. So this is in October 1604. Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn would be at one vertex of a triangle, forming the fiery triangle in the fiery trigon. In particular, it's the Sagittarius vertex. A conjunction in the fiery trigon presaged great things. A fiery triangle was surpassed as an omen only by a comet. Indeed, there were some who held that the comet foreboded the triangle of fire in the fiery trigon. I say some, for by 1603, Germany was flooded with the predictions of astrologers for the following year. But the prelude to the great event of 1603, when Jupiter and Saturn would be in Sagittarius and crossed by, yes, that would be when they crossed in Sagittarius. Mars would come through later, wouldn't it? Would it? This is a year after, so it's December 1603, September and October of 1604 would, I don't think that's enough time for Saturn and Jupiter to move to the next corner of the thing, but I'm not sure. How fast does it take them? It takes Jupiter 11.86 Earth years once to circle the Sun. Oh, that didn't answer my question. How long does it take to circle the ecliptic? It's about the same. They used astrologers, the Babylonians, used Jupiter's roughly 12-year orbit along the ecliptic to define the constellations of their zodiac. So it takes about 12 years to go all the way around, and then another 8 to get over here. And am I going in the right direction? Let's look. Yes, okay, look, this says 1583. So add 12 to that, 1583, and you would get back here in 1595, add another 8 years, and you get here to 1603. So that's Jupiter circling once. Then Jupiter circles again from 1603, add 12 to that, you get 1615, right? And add 8 to that, and you get 1623. So it takes Jupiter 12 years to circle the zodiac once, but it takes 20 years for it to cross Saturn again. So if Mars crossed Jupiter on October 9th, which was almost nearly a year later, it's going to be about 30 degrees right ascension further around the sky. Okay, I'm jumping to a table on Wikipedia about the Great Conjunction, and in regards to the conjunction that was of great interest to Johanne Kepler in 1603, it would have been a little bit disappointing because they were 59 arc minutes apart. That is almost a full degree. That is about the width of, I think, about the width of your pinky or maybe your thumb. So the two stars didn't come close together. They did have the same right ascension. Both of them were at right ascension of 253.8 degrees, and I can't remember where that's measured, but right there. But I do know it was in Sagittarius. The 59 degrees represents the declination, the difference in declination. They were, because the two planes of orbit are not exactly parallel to each other or to Earth. compare that to the one that just happened, it was 6.1 arc minutes away from each other. So in that situation, they were very, very close together. Now, what made the 7 BC conjunction special was not this number. It was like 2 degree. It was like 120. What was it? Yeah, like 120 arc minutes or 2 degrees apart. They were really far apart when that conjunction happened. But what made it special was not this number, but this. It was a triple conjunction. Look what happened in 1981. We had uh, the stars Jupiter and Saturn crossed in January 1981, then in March of 1981, then in July of 1981. Okay, but for Mr. Johann Kepler, the prelude to the great event, the conjunction of 1603, was not spectacular. The planets were too close to the Sun. They rose less than an hour before it. Kepler had predicted the conjunction for between December 16th and 18th, and he was quite right. It was on December 17th. On the morning of the 16th, he was at his post. Jupiter rose after dawn, so he's kind of early. Kepler could not see Saturn. The light of day was too bright. On the 17th, it rained at Prague, and not until Christmas morning was there a cloudless sky. On the morning of the 25th, Kepler saw Jupiter, Saturn, and Mercury forming, as it were, a triangle in the sky. From his observations of December 16th and 25th, he calculated that the conjunction of Jupiter-Saturn took place at midday, December 17th. He also calculated that Mercury was in conjunction with Saturn on December 22nd and with Jupiter on December 23rd. Wow. Okay. And remember, Mercury is an inner planet, so that's part of the reason that the Sun is in the way. So he calculated that at the conjunction of December 17th, Jupiter was 1 degree 5 minutes vertically above Saturn. That is about twice the diameter of the Moon above Saturn. So he said 1 degree 5 minutes, and the Wikipedia says it was 59 minutes. So he was 6 minutes off, according to Wikipedia. In the following September, all eyes were turned to the sky, and that would have been when, I think, when Mars was crossing. Some, says Kepler, watched to correct their ephemerides, some for the sake of pleasure, some because of the rarity of the occasion, some to verify their predictions, and others indeed to see if there would be a comet, as had been expressly predicted by the astrology of the Arabs. Ephemeris is a table or data file giving the calculated positions of a celestial object at regular intervals throughout a period, or a book or set of such tables or files. Okay, the planets were well placed for observation, setting about 5 hours after the Sun. Saturn was about 7 degrees west of Jupiter. On September 26th, Mars was in conjunction with Saturn. Kepler's luck was as before. It was cloudy at Prague. On the following evening, however, he saw the planets and measured their positions. His observation showed Mars to be 3 degrees lower than Saturn, and Mars was in conjunction with Jupiter on October 9th, and Kepler calculated that at the time of the conjunction, Mars was 2 degrees below Jupiter. He did not see the planets at all on the evening of the 9th, for the reason that it was cloudy again. He had last observed them himself on October 3rd. His assistant made observations on October 7th. One Johann Brunowski, assistant to the Imperial Vice-Chancellor, saw them from Prague, October 8th, through a rift in the clouds. There were no rifts in the clouds over Prague on the evening of the 9th, but that evening Fabricius in Switzerland, Maestlin at Tübingen, and Rosslin in Alsace observed them, and did not notice anything amiss. On Sunday, October 10th, the evening after the conjunction, Johann Brunowski saw a star as bright as Jupiter to the right of Jupiter, and above it about as much as Mars was below it. As he watched, in wonder, clouds came to blot out the view. In the morning he reported to Kepler what he saw. Not until October 17th was the sky cloudless at Prague. Meanwhile, the new star was seen by various astronomers in various places. On the evening of October 17th, Kepler was watching at sunset. Before Jupiter was visible, the nova shone forth. From that moment it became Kepler's star. He diligently observed it. On November 16th he saw it for the last time that year. The sun was approaching. On January 3rd, 1605, it was visible as a morning star, but not quite as bright as it was. Thereafter, its brightness declined. In the year 1605, Kepler last saw it on October 8th. Already, because of its diminished brightness, the sun was too close for the star to be seen in the evening sky. In January and February 1606, Kepler was looking for it in the morning, but it was never seen with the naked eye. To Kepler it was Nova Stella in Pede Serpentari, the new star, in the foot of the serpent holder. Today it is known as the variable Nova NR1 1604 Ophiuchus, and at its brightest ranks as the second brightest nova recorded in history. For October 17, 1604, Kepler gives the longitude and latitude of the planets in the nova as follows. And oh, here's a picture. Here is, he has it in Sagittarius. There's Jupiter, Saturn, Mars, and there's the nova right next to it. Wow. So the second brightest nova in history happened during a conjunction of the planets. That's pretty wild. Not just a conjunction of the planets, but a conjunction of the ancient known outer planets. This is pretty much all of them. They didn't know about Neptune back then. They didn't know about Uranus back then. They just knew about these three outer planets. I don't think even Kepler knew about Neptune or Uranus because the telescope hadn't been invented yet. All these people were just staring up into the sky using just their eyes. Can you imagine? Anyway, whilst the nova was in the sky, Kepler was compiling material for a book about it. This book was published in Prague in 1606. It was entitled De Stella Nova and Pede Serpentari. Whilst thinking much about his star and his book, Kepler went down to Graz in Styria on some business connected with his wife's property. There he came across a book which set him thinking about the Star of Bethlehem. When last summer he wrote to Johann Barabbas on September 6, 1606, he went to Styria about his family affairs. A piece of good luck befell his studies, for he found for sale at Graz a small book of Lawrence Susliga of Poland entitled Theoremata de anno ortus ac mortis domini, dec universa Jesu Christi in carne oeconomia. Wonderfully pleased with the argument of the book, I began to think of accommodating it to my little book on the new star in the serpent holder, which I was then contemplating. For if the author was correct, in order to reckon the age of Christ, 4 years must be added to the epoch of Christianity now in use. It would follow, therefore, that Christ was born 1 or 2 years after the great conjunction of the three superior planets, in the first part of Aries, or in the end of Pisces, occurring for the 6th time since the foundation of the world. Hence the star which led the Magi to the manger of the Christ, if it occurred 2 years before the birth of Christ, could be compared with our star. Kepler supposed that the great conjunction occurred a little less than every 800 years, starting with the year 4000 BC. Okay, so Kepler was a creationist. That seems reasonable. Galileo wasn't really around yet. Galileo was after or Galileo invented the telescope, recall. Um, and so it's reasonable. Kepler was raised as a Christian, and uh, pretty much all of the Christian stuff said creationism. So before Kepler could make comparisons, he had to establish that Christ was born 2 years after the beginning of the Great Conjunction. With this end in view, he added an appendix to his De Stella Nova in Serpentari. In it, he rehearsed the argument of Susliga. He pointed out the 5 complete years before our era led to 31st of December BC 6, or 1st of January BC 5. He placed the death of Herod a year earlier than did Susliga. This enabled him to reach the year 5 BC as the year of the coming of the Magi. Kepler's excursion into the field of chronology laid him open to criticism from many sides. He was unflinching in his defense of his position, and as regards the Star of Bethlehem, he always had the same suggestion to make. His definitive work on the date of the birth of Christ was De Varo Anno quo Aeternus de Filius Humanum in utero benedictae Virginis Mariae assumissit. So I'm trying to vaguely translate that. The year of eternal uh, child of man in in utero, baby, man and baby, uh, benedicte, I don't know, of a virgin, the Virgin Mary, uh, belief. Okay, in this book, when he comes to consider the star of the Magi, he says this star was not of the ordinary run of comets or new stars, but by a special miracle moved in the lower layer of the atmosphere. So, okay, Kepler saw a supernova shortly when Mars was crossing Jupiter and Saturn. So that's a big thing. That's such a I think what happened is it seemed to him such a coincidence, such a big coincidence. I mean, this was a big supernova. It was the second one the second biggest supernova in history. And it happened at that time. And so he's thinking that the he's Kepler thought, well, that's a miracle. Why shouldn't it have happened in another miracle have happened during the time of Christ? So he comes to consider the star of Magi. He said this star was not of the ordinary run of comets or new stars, but by a special miracle moved in the lower layer of the atmosphere. And then he goes on to tell how the conjunction of the planets might have been a harbinger of the miraculous star. They weren't the star, but they were the harbinger of it. So the Magi were of Chaldea, where was born astrology, of which this is a dictum: great conjunctions of planets in cardinal points, especially in the equinoctial points of Aries and Libra, signify a universal change of affairs, and a cometary star appearing in the same time tells of the rise of the king. Granted then, okay, wait a second, a cometary star appearing at this time tells of the rise of a king. Uh, so the person that comes to mind when the person that comes to mind in regards to the comet of 1603, Galileo would have been 40 years old. Isaac Newton would not be born yet for 39 more years. Okay, the most obvious reading here, they called it Kepler star, so Kepler's the king. Okay, just make Kepler the king, because that's the name of the star. Believe in the name of the Son of Man, right? If they called it Kepler star, he's the reigning king. So, where was I? The Magi were of Chaldea, where was born astrology, of which this is a dictum. Great conjunctions of planets in cardinal points, especially in the equinoctial points of Aries and Libra, signify a universal change of affairs, and a cometary star appearing in the same time tells of the rise of a king. Granted, then, that the new star of the Magi was first seen not only at the same time as Saturn and Jupiter were beheld each each in the other's vicinity, namely in June BC 7, but also in the same part of the sky as the planets. What else could the Chaldeans conclude from their and the still existing rules of their art of astrology, but that some event of the greatest moment was imminent? Nor do I doubt but that God would have condescended to cater to the credulity of the Chaldeans. This is odd phrasing. Nor do I doubt but that God would have condescended to cater to the credulity of the Chaldeans. So I think he's basically saying, why not? If the Chaldeans were out seeking the coming of a great king, why wouldn't they have gone to Bethlehem to find him? So Kepler calculated that Jupiter appeared to pass Saturn 3 times in the year BC 7, namely in June, August, and December, when they were in Pisces. He calculated that there was an apparent conjunction of Mars with Saturn in Pisces in February BC 6, and with Jupiter in Aries in March BC 6. Okay, so on the map, the planets follow this line. This is actually a straight line. It doesn't look straight because it is a Mercator map. The actual straight line has been pulled to the equator and the lines of longitude on the Earth, but this is the ecliptic, and it is basically the line that the planets orbit on. Pisces is right here, and what did they say? It went through Aries? Aries, oddly enough, look, it's been chopped in two. There's no Aries there. Okay, I put out a question yesterday on Quora because I really had no idea which direction do planets go through the constellations when they are prograde. And two people answered. West to east is their proper and prograde direction. And this person says west to east. It means they move right to left in the northern hemisphere. This is how I've got things lined up now. Jupiter is in Aries, the Ram. Saturn is in Pisces. And Jupiter will cross Saturn the first time here, June of -7. And then Jupiter continues on, maybe goes to Aquarius, maybe goes all the way to Capricorn, the goat, and then comes back. Saturn crosses it again. Maybe Saturn gets all the way up to Aquarius, maybe not. But it starts slipping behind, and they cross again in Pisces, December 7th. By this time, Mars has caught up to Saturn, and they cross in Aries, which is the Ram. And then finally, in February of -6 BC, Mars catches up to Jupiter. So that is essentially what goes on, and I feel like this kind of may tell a story if you look at what's going on in the perspective of Mars being the bull, and what was this? Jupiter probably got all the way up to Capricorn, which is the water goat, and maybe Saturn may have pulled all the way back to the ram to meet in Pisces again. And what happens is here, the goat and the ram are kind of mixed up, kind of shuffled together, and you got the bull coming in. This guy is saying, uh, make straight the way for the Lord, while these two are kind of mixing it up. And this would be Jesus. One of these would be Jesus uh, of Bethlehem, and the other one would be Jesus Barabbas. But it's all mixed up, and we don't know which one's which. Once again, everything is in prograde. Jupiter catches up with Saturn, uh, reverses either in Aquarius or Capricorn, reverses course, hits Saturn again, so June, July, August, while Saturn is still crossing through Pisces. Saturn goes retrograde, Jupiter goes prograde, so they cross again in December, -7. And then Jupiter might, during that time, get all the way into Aries, or perhaps Taurus, I don't know. But during that time, Jupiter could get over into the Ram. So Jupiter has gone all the way from Capricorn to Aries and back. Um, and so he could be representing both the goat and the ram, and then crossing Saturn again, while in the meantime Mars has been going prograde the whole time, uh, and he crosses, let's see, in February he crosses, which one? Mars Saturn. Mars Saturn. He crosses Saturn here in February, and then he crosses Jupiter in March. I think I may have messed that up again. Alright, I am trying to reproduce what I thought I did the first time, but it's not coming out quite the way I'd hoped. Anyway, Mars, Saturn, and Jupiter. Jupiter should, when prograde, Jupiter goes faster than Saturn, and Mars should go faster than Jupiter. The inner planets move the fastest. And then we've got these dates, which suggest that all three of the Jupiter-Saturn all three of the Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions happened before the Mars-Saturn conjunction. The Mars-Saturn conjunction happened in Pisces before the Mars-Jupiter conjunction happened in Aries. But anyway, I feel like this is sort of related to Leviticus 16, how Aaron is to enter the most holy place. He brings a young bull for a sin offering. This would be Mars coming in from the constellation of Taurus, a ram for burnt offering. This would be one of those planets coming in from Aries, the ram. He has to bathe himself with water before he puts on the linens. That would be Aquarius, the constellation Aquarius, and take 2 male goats for a sin offering and a ram for burnt offering. Again, Capricorn is the goat sign and Aries is the ram sign. The bull, again, is from Taurus. And then you cast lots for the 2 goats, one lot for the Lord and one for the scapegoat. And that is basically this shuffling of Jupiter and Saturn that goes on in front of the twins constellation. The idea is you've got 2 twins and you're shuffling them and you don't know which is which. Then furthermore, it kind of fits in with the Christmas, the life of Jesus, because Jesus of Bethlehem was, at least allegedly, slaughtered for the sin offering of all mankind. And then Jesus Barabbas was accused of murder and wickedness and rebellion and all all the sins of the Israelites, all of the sins of Barabbas were put on his head, of the Israelites were put on Barabbas's head, and he was sent away into the wilderness in the care of someone appointed for the task. Um, I my my reading on this is that Barabbas went out into the wilderness under the care of Simon the Cyrene. Simon the Cyrene would mean Cyrene means the mighty one. And then the goat carries on itself all the sins to a remote place. I think the remote place they're speaking of is the Gospel of John, and the man shall release it into the wilderness. So just to be clear, my theory here isn't really based on anything magical. I'm just pointing out the nature of these constellations: Pisces, the twins, Taurus, the bull, Capricorn, the goat, and Aries, the ram, and well, the water, and just how they're just kind of lined up there, so that they do sort of show the planets going through the motions. The planets themselves are going through the motions of Leviticus 16, and the this also happens to fit in very well with another theory that I've been working on this Christmas break, which is the idea that John's Gospel is the gospel of the scapegoat, and the idea that actually where Jesus, Son of the Father, it should be read Jesus Barabbas. And John's Gospel is, in large part, it's a set of riddles, and it's also a set of like riddles, Son of the Father riddles, I call them, and also a set of, well, accusations or confessions. Basically, a whole bunch of bad stuff that Jesus Barabbas uh, is being accused of. He's being accused of these things. We don't really have any idea whether or not Jesus Barabbas actually did these things, but if you read John's Gospel carefully, it's more. It seems a little bit more like confession of sins than wise teachings. Whereas the character Jesus in Matthew, Mark, and Luke is a lot of miraculous healing, and his teaching is his moral teaching is very sound. Anyway, Merry Christmas 2020. Have a Happy New Year.